how to get ideas and plan your essays. What we're going to do is look at about 5 or 6 IELTS Task 2 questions, and together we're going to work through what we're going to write for each paragraph. I'm going to be quite quick, but I just want to show you the process I use for when I'm writing my essays. And I do write a lot of essays because I find that the more I write, the easier it gets logically. And of course, being a native speaker, I don't have to check it. Although I will admit my spelling isn't fantastic. However, I've got Microsoft Word and stuff like that, and it's only the odd problem usually with the vowels and stuff. But anyway, let's get going. First of all, good luck to Shoko and Hamilian, the 2 online students that are going to take their test. I've been working with them, trying to get ideas, working on the speaking, getting ideas for essays, working on the grammar, and I'm pretty certain they're going to do it. So we will see. I'll let you know how it goes, but I'm pretty certain they can do it. We've been working quite hard, especially Shoko. She never stops sending me essays, but it's good. Let's get started. So I've decided to take questions from about 3 or 4 subjects: globalisation, education and equality. Let's get started. So, first question: do you think it is better for students to work before their university study? Why? Use reasons and specific examples to support your choice. Now then, for this essay I decided yes, it is better. And for the first paragraph I said the student would get practical experience, they get contacts, they get on-the-job skills. That's a very good collocation to use, on-the-job skills. And then to prove my point, I give an example and I say, studies from the UK government show that graduates with work experience are twice as likely to find employment. So it's quite believable, that example. And of course, these are just rough ideas, but it's a solid idea, and I'm going to say yes from beginning to the end. I'm not going to write a discursive essay because there's no need to. I agree totally with what the question says. Then for question 2, once again, yes, and a second reason. So I'll say, kind of continue with the first argument. I'll say it's better preparation, chance to improve social skills, close the gap between academia and the private sector. Yeah, some also more collocations there: social skills, private sector. It also helps the student to commit. It also helps the student before they commit to a long-term plan. So it helps them decide. And then for my example, I said 1 out of 6 students will change their higher education course while at university. And of course, if you actually look at the presentation on Slideshare or the video on YouTube, you'll see that the notes, they're not full sentences. It's just a few bullet points, random ideas, all put together. And I've used the shortened version. I didn't say university, I just put uni. Because at this stage, my grammar doesn't have to be perfect. The spelling doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just getting ideas and building the essay. And in this podcast, we're just going to look at paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. Because introductions and conclusions can be written after you've got your main ideas for your body paragraphs, and that's where you pick up most points. Next question, also related to education. Some people believe that children should do organised activities in their free time, while others believe that children should be free to do what they want to do in their free time. Not the best written question there, but anyway. Which viewpoint do you agree with? Use specific reasons and examples to support your answer. Let's go. So, quickly, I'm writing down ideas. I'm going to say there's lots of benefits in letting the mind wander, Children can express themselves, they can find themselves, they can do what they prefer and excel at. Okay, so like I said, ideas. I'm just getting them down. Maybe I'll use 2 of these in the actual body paragraph. Then I've got an example, or a believable example. I invented this, but it doesn't matter. I invented this, but it's believable. Recent studies show 12% of school students dislike physical education. Therefore, if sports were chosen, it would be unfair to this minority. Yep, that's believable. It's about 12%. I remember at school there's a few that didn't like sports. So it's believable. I'm not saying 99% of all students hate physical activity, because that would just be insanely inaccurate. And also, notice the vocabulary I used. I've used the collocations, of course, physical education, where is it now? Express themselves, well, not that many in that one, but physical education is one. But I also used dislike. I didn't say hate or absolutely disgust, because that's very strong language, and this is an academic essay, so we have to limit it a little bit. We cannot be so absolute. Now, my second paragraph focuses on the cost and what would be necessary. Okay, so basically the disadvantages. And so I'm saying that 1, it would be costly for the school. They'd need time to plan it. They might need to buy possible equipment. And then for my example, I will say, furthermore, studies show that the brain operates better after a distraction from a structured task such as studying. Then finish the sentence with therefore. Removing recreational time from a student's schedule would have detrimental effects. Okay. Also note the not special vocabulary, but the more specific vocabulary. I'm talking about schedule, recreational times. This is good vocabulary because it's vocabulary only related to education, or specially related to education. So it shows the examiner I've got rich vocabulary. Next question. Many people say that globalisation and the growing number of multinational companies have a negative effect on the environment. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Use specific reasons and examples to support your position. So, what's the crux of the question? That globalisation and multinational companies are damaging the environment, having a negative effect. So, first, that globalization definitely damaging the environment. I could be long and I could give a long and complex, more accurate answer, saying that globalization is increasing the costs of world economic resources, which is therefore increasing the price of substitute products or rival products such as ecological energy from wind farms, blah blah blah. But the examiner doesn't care. Yeah, he wants to see just something logical. So I'm just going to take the simple route, something that's going to be easy to explain and where I've got some good vocabulary. Okay, let's go. This is my idea. Increased interaction between countries leads to increased goods and services traded, which means more production, therefore more resource extraction, or more, such as mining. Maybe I'd remove that in my final sentence, because then I can just talk about the example, which would be, for example, in China, largely considered the workshop of the world. In many cities, air pollution masks are needed to commute around the city centre. Okay, so therefore I've proved my point. I said that environment is damaging, globalization is damaging the environment. Quite simple, believable example, and it's easy to follow. Next, I had to go back to the question because I wanted to check. The second point was about multinationals, and Once again, I've taken the simple route. It says multinationals are responsible for negative effects on the environment. It's quite a big statement to say that, but I'm just going to say yes. I'm just going to say yes because it's simple. I'm getting points for my language, not for the quality of my ideas. So I will say yes. Multinationals do increase pollution. Globalisation requires global solutions. These can have drastic consequences if accidents happen. Yep. Of course, I'm going to expand it a little bit, but that's the main part of my argument. I've used, it says a negative effect on the environment in the question. Here I've put increased pollution, more or less the same. I've put destroyed the local ecosystem in my example. My example, I talk about BP, the Gulf of Mexico, the oil spill a few years ago, destroyed the local ecosystem. It proves my point. And I've put, if you caught them before, I said drastic consequences, just another collocation there. Once again, getting a solid plan together, putting down my points, thinking of an example that will correspond. Then I've got 2 solid paragraphs. Now all I have to do is my conclusion and introduction, which I can draw from the body paragraphs. Next question. Parents want to achieve balance between family and career, but only a few manage to achieve it. What do you think is the reason? Discuss possible solutions and provide examples. Now, we've got the problem and a possible solution. So the first paragraph will be, what is the reason why there is a challenge trying to find a balance between family and career? My second paragraph, I will suggest solutions. This is very important. I've paid attention to the question, and each paragraph will correspond to the question, to the parts of the question, the structure of the question, and therefore I'm going to pick up points for task response. Let's have a look. So the first reason why there is an imbalance, notice as well I use the negative form of the verb. It says, where is it now? It says achieve a balance. It's difficult to achieve a balance. So I said the reason for the imbalance, is because there's increased competition in the workplace, changes in society, increase in the amount of working mothers puts strain on the family. As you can see, I've got quite a few points here, so I might cut them down and only use the ones most relevant to my example. And my example, once again, is completely invented, but it's believable. Here it is. Example. For example, studies in the United States or in the US show that families with 2 full-time parents are more likely to separate. Therefore, this shows that finding the balance is incredibly difficult. This is the reason. This is what I think. They're more likely to separate, full-time, lots of stress. It's going to be difficult. Paragraph 2, possible solutions. Possible solutions. Here I've just gone for something that fitted. I came up with my example first, and then I thought, okay, I can go with this route. First I thought of France having a 35-hour working week, which was quite outrageous for the UK and for the United States to even do this, due to the culture that we have there in the UK. So the solution would be regulations from the government, and governments could legislate for increasing maternity leave, more flexible working practices, and a reduced working week. For example, in France, the government proposed and implemented a 35-hour working week. Okay. Also, lots of collocations there. Increasing maternity leave, flexible working practices, working week. Use these. Once again, it's special vocabulary that you're only going to find talking about this topic. So we've done a few questions about globalisation, also touching on the environment. We've done a few about education. Now we're going to do one about, another one about equality. Let's go. Nowadays, both men and women spend a lot of money on beauty care. This was not so in the past. What may be the root cause of this behaviour? Discuss the reasons and possible results. Now this one was tricky. This one was tricky for me because it's difficult to find examples about this, especially for 2 paragraphs. Oh, okay, it wasn't difficult, but it was a bit more of a challenge and I had to think more. But it's important that you do the thinking process beforehand. So let's have a look at paragraph 1. And before I tell you the answers, try and think of some ideas yourself. Yeah, the more times you do this, the more times you look at a question and think of examples, think of ideas, think of arguments, the easier it gets, especially regarding the examples, especially inventing the examples. So my idea was basically marketing. I'll give you the question again. Nowadays, both men and women spend a lot of money on beauty care. This was not so in the past. What may be the root cause of this behaviour? Discuss the reasons and possible results. My idea for paragraph 1, marketing. Okay? And for this it was quite easy to think of examples because we are exposed to publicity every day, so it's not that difficult. So the beauty market for women is worth millions. Consumer goods companies see potential for the male market. Once again, just bullet points. Therefore, developing new ranges. L'Oreal Men Expert. And therefore, the reason is the potential opportunity. Okay? The female market is worth millions. The male market is undeveloped. Therefore, develop the male market. And we've practically doubled our sales. So let's have a look at some of the collocations. Consumer goods companies. Okay, and I could even say consumer goods companies such as L'Oreal, Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson see the potential for the male market. Okay, and for example, L'Oreal developed Men Expert. Okay, and that's fine. That's fine. If I put all these ideas together in one cohesive paragraph, and if you need to know how to write a cohesive paragraph, have a look at the sentence guide at IELTSPodcast.com, because that gives you just a really simple formula to use to drop your ideas in, and hey presto, you have a strong coherent paragraph. Let's go. Next paragraph. This one was a little bit more difficult to think of because I was going a bit off topic. I was going to talk about people are now caring for themselves more. They're starting to eat more organic food, and then I thought, whoa, stop. That's a crazy idea. There's nothing to do with organic food. So what I did, I just crossed it all out, went back to the beginning, and I said it's difficult to say the result of this because it's earlier. I went back to the question. The second part was discuss the reasons and possible results. Well, the results are that it's difficult to say because it's early days. And then I say, however, the general trend is in this direction. For example, deodorant was considered unnecessary before the 1950s. Therefore, the market will probably grow and it will be completely normal in the future. Okay, I didn't have to say recent studies or stuff like that because it's kind of clear. Deodorant wasn't a product available in the 1950s, before the 1950s. However, the consumer goods companies slowly introduced it into society. So maybe if you're from a different country, you'll think of an example. maybe it's happening at the moment in certain countries, 10 years ago there was no market for moisturizer in the country. Now the local market is the second biggest in the world, blah blah blah, something like that. Okay, so now to get this skill of thinking of ideas and building paragraphs, what you can do is go to IELTSPodcast.com/250, the numbers, download 250 IELTS Task 2 questions, 20 IELTS essays, and if you're still having problems, if you want to develop it further, you can go to IELTSPodcast.com and have a look at the sentence guide, and I've been having lots of success with that. It's making the whole process a lot easier. And so definitely consider that. And if you've got any questions, just send us an email and I'll be happy to respond. I'll be happy to help you out. Okay, good luck in the exam. It's just a question of work. I think you can do it. All right, keep on it. Keep going.